All right, fair and balanced now. We talked to a top Republican, now a top Democrat on what to make these early days of a Biden administration that has to juggle getting an agenda through, appointments through, and squeeze in an impeachment of the former president of the United States. Senator Bob Casey, Democrat of Pennsylvania right now, joining us. Senator, thanks for coming in. Always enjoy having you. Is it all doable to do all of that? I know that old line, you know, we're going to walk and chew gum at the same time. The record sometimes in Congress is that it can't. Are you optimistic that it can and get all this stuff done?
Neil, good to be with you. Yes, I think we can. Obviously, a lot to do is Senator Rounds, my colleague, who's a really decent guy and a great legislator. Mike Rounds was pointing to getting the cabinet nominations process, especially the ones that were completed this week. And I think Janet Yellen, who got a 26-0 vote in the Finance Committee, of which I'm a member, that's a good sign for that Treasury Secretary nomination. So I think that's going to that will play out in the next couple of days, week. In addition to that, we've got to continue to work on the proposal that President Biden laid out, the American Rescue Plan. I know some Republicans won't like parts of it, but I think we can come to a consensus on that because no matter where you live, you have these high case numbers and high death numbers, over 400, we're about 15,000 people who are dead and about 25 million cases. In Pennsylvania, Neil, we've got, in terms of COVID deaths, more COVID deaths in our state than were killed in action in World War II. I think that's true of a number of states. So we have to work on that. And then thirdly, we have to ultimately, not this week, because this week will just be formalities, but starting February 8th, we have to go through and process an impeachment trial. But I still think even in that week, and I think it's probably going to be, I hope it's just that week or 10 days, in the mornings we can get things done, whether it's nominations or committee meetings or otherwise.
You know, you mentioned about the COVID relief and the stimulus plan around it. How does a push for a $15 federal minimum wage address some of these COVID issues up front? I mean, important though, I'm sure it is to you, sir. There are a lot of people who are saying, let's just get this focused on COVID-related issues, and now is not the time to be getting sidetracked on an issue that could be quite onerous, for example, to small businesses already hurting precisely because of COVID.
Well, Neil, look, I think when a president wins an election, they want to set the agenda for the issues that they talked about in the campaign, and raising the minimum wage is something Joe Biden talked about a lot, and he won the election.
So I understand that. No, you're quite right, Senator, but is now the time, now in this piece of legislation, the time to do that?
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do is he made a bold proposal there, $1.9 trillion. And you know what, Neil, I'm glad he did. Because you know what sometimes Democrats do? We negotiate against ourselves. Why not present a bold vision for this proposal? And then I think ultimately a second proposal that's focused on jobs in the economy almost exclusively in the caregiving economy. But for now, on COVID, I think it was smart for him to make a bold proposal. Now, the good news is, as I was just looking at the screen earlier in your broadcast, the fact that Joe Biden's meeting with Republican senators early on, I think that's a good sign that will continue. And there are some days where we can reach consensus and other days where he has to plow forward. But I think there's plenty of opportunity for good old-fashioned negotiation to get to a place where we can begin to speed up the vaccinations, begin to reopen schools, and get the economy kick-started.
Are you for blowing up the filibuster, Senator?
Neil, based upon what's happened over the last not just 4 years, but the last 6 years, where it seems like the Senate became kind of a nomination machine only, substantive legislation didn't move very far, I'm in the frustrated senator camp. I think that's a pretty broad group for different reasons, maybe depending on the party. But I'm much more open to this idea than I would have been 2-3 years ago, because we have to legislate more.
What would then be the difference? Then what would be the difference, Senator, between the body in which you work, the elite 100 senators of these United States, and the House, where 435 work? Maybe the only difference is the length of your terms. That's one special right with the Senate that would be blown away if the filibuster is blown away, right?
Well, we'll see. And I think that debate is still kind of in the early stages. we've got to concentrate now on getting COVID relief out the door real fast. And then, by the way, I think as President Biden proposed, that $1,400 check, which I think has a lot of support in both parties, maybe not reflected in what Republican senators say right now, but I think there's a lot of support for it because there's a lot of people hurting now.
But
We
not
still
all,
have a
not
high
all Democrats are
high
on board,
unemployment
right,
rate.
Senator? I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but even Senator Joe Manchin has raised eyebrows about the size of the package and whether the stimulus checks will go out to people who don't, for example, need them or deserve them, that it should be focused and targeted, and that's a big concern of his. That sounds like a potential early no Democratic vote. Are you concerned?
Well, when you're trying to get relief to a lot of people that are hurting, and especially people who live in communities of color, low-income folks who have suffered disproportionately with regard to the virus, higher cases, higher death numbers, higher unemployment, all kinds of calamities hitting communities at the same time. I think it's important to get big and bold relief out there. I would err on the side of something too big as opposed to trying to be so targeted that you miss having the impact. The good news is on the $1,400 is it has a stimulative effect as well. We want people to use that to buy food. We still have record numbers of people going every day without food. People in food lines have never been in those lines in their lives. So I would rather, to use an expression, punch that COVID challenge and punch down the unemployment numbers so we can jumpstart the economy. I think the risk of doing too little is much higher than the risk of over appropriating, so to speak.
All right, we'll see what happens. Senator Bob Casey, thank you very much.